All right, let's power on through here then. We've got board number 6 coming up, and this is deep dish pizza, which is definitely something Chicago is known for. In Austria, we've got former world champion Nicolas Sahuguet, who has been very familiar to watchers of our broadcast. He's sitting in with the DBNI ranking of number 14. In England, we've got Jason Mastbaum, familiar to lots of face-to-face players, regular on the circuit, coming to us out of Los Angeles. And hang on a second, we've got a little bit of business to do behind the scenes. And all right, in France, we've got Melinda Holley coming to us from a properly spelled Phoenix City in Alabama. Melinda is a very long time hobby player that, David, you've known for 30 plus years at this point. Yes. And Melinda was a guest on the previous episode of Deadline News hosted by you. Yes. In Germany, we've got Advait Arunav coming to us from Singapore. In Italy, we've got Karl Ronneburg coming to us from either Seattle or New York, depending on the weekend. I'm not sure which one this weekend is. In Russia, we've got Peter McNamara coming to us from Melbourne, Australia. So another one in whatever time zone that is. That's really far away. Like 13 hours difference, I think, between Australia and here in Singapore and here. And in Turkey, we've got David Miller playing from Olney, Maryland, which is actually not too far from where I grew up. And I used to go play soccer there a lot. All right. So which one of you is up for giving us background on these players?
Well, it's me, and I have a few things to say. Nicolas, of course, almost goes without saying. He's actually a Frenchman who lives in Montreal, and I have played with Nicolas many times. Such a spectacular diplomat and really a great guy. In addition to being a world champion, he's just a prince of a guy to play with. So it'll be fun to see how that interacts here. Jason Mastbaum, somebody that I've been playing with for probably 10 or 15 years also. He started off, I think, in the D.C. area, as I recall, playing D.C. games. Went to some East Coast tournaments. Then he moved to California. There's a lot of experience there. Melinda, literally, since I joined the hobby in 1984, I've known Melinda Holley. She actually started in the early 80s. She doesn't remember this. She thinks she started in the late 80s. She actually started playing diplomacy in 1982, because I remember reading about that at one point. Advait from Singapore just learned the game in March, but he's been playing a lot of virtual face-to-face games and other online games, and we're just thrilled to have a player from Singapore involved in our virtual hobby. Karl is someone, I think he's got a significant amount of experience, somewhere in the 15 years of experience for Karl. Peter, who we call the Peter McNamara, the Australian Peter McNamara. There's another Peter McNamara that plays, who's from somewhere else.
From Chicago.
Peter, from Chicago. This Peter is outstanding. Both Peters are actually outstanding, but this one's really outstanding and has been playing for a very long time. And I have seen him in tournaments for years. He's been playing for 20 plus years. David Miller, someone who actually picked up the game about 5 years ago. David's comes to Dixicon every year, and I have watched him progress. When he first learned the game, and Doug, you've played with him a bunch too. When we first saw David come, he was learning the game. He wasn't very good. He got pasted a lot. He got destroyed. Started steadily getting better. Now he's a 2-time Dixicon winner. David is a real success story in 5 years of game play.
This is a stacked board.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah.
This is definitely, and we had the other board, which had 4 of the top 8 players in it. These players, some of them didn't play last weekend, I don't think, but you can look at their rankings. They're all ranked, and the person who's ranked lowest here is, maybe one of the best 2 players on the board.
No question.
If you're going to take a wild guess, just like looking at the draw, who would be your pick, David?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, David Miller, and I'm not saying we know anything about what happens in this game, and anything could happen in this game. But if you held a gun to my head and said pick one of these guys, I'd say David Miller's really good. But the minute I say that, I'm thinking, but Peter McNamara's Russia. I don't know, but I'm playing Austria, so I don't know what that means.
Just pick one. You're not going to hold you to it.
I'm going to go with Peter McNamara for the only reason that he's playing from Australia right now, and he is a fantastic player. So I'm going to go with Peter.
Yeah, Peter's my pick too. I don't know why, but I'd love to see Melinda or Jason pull something out of the West here, and Advait too. Anyone on this board would be really fun.
It's such a great board. I can't wait.
This has been great.
So who is west? Who is east? Let's see. Doug, you pick.
Yeah, I picked first last time. Let's.
Oh, did you? All right, David, what do you got?
I'll take the West. Just
all right.
I'll let Doug figure out who's going to win the stacked East.
All right, David,
Sounds
call
awesome.
the opening. Call the opening in the West for us.
All right, this was actually pretty similar. The one thing I wanted to the supported attack on Burgundy is something we've seen tonight earlier. The one thing I really want to focus on is the German opening, because I was telling Brandon about this sometime a few weeks ago. This used to be a really common German opening when I first started the hobby in the 80s. It's the push for 3 centers in 01, where you go to Holland so you can support yourself to Belgium, and you just give up on the possibility of bouncing the Russians in Sweden. Don't see this hardly ever anymore. It's interesting to see it in this game.
All right, tell us about the East.
This is, I think, a pretty cautious opening by everybody involved. Maximum flexibility. You got the bounce in Galicia, and you got the bounce in the Black Sea. I think that, I really like what's going to happen for Peter because he's guaranteed Sweden. And that's just a mammoth relief when you're Russia. So I know that's branching over into your neck of the woods there, David, but I just think that opening and looking forward, that's just so significant for Peter at this point. So we'll just have to see how the East plays out because we're not seeing anything from these moves.
Would that make you more inclined to give Turkey a little bit of sugar here? You're less worried about the board reacting to an RT if you're going to get that Sweden build?
I mean, I think it actually makes me more aggressive in the South.
Okay.
Because I've got a build in the bag, and I really want to assert that I'm going to get rum. So I'm going to bounce in the Black Sea because I don't care if I get rum at this point. I would prefer to keep Turkey in the box.
Got it. All right.
If anything makes Doug more aggressive, something has drastically occurred here that was not anticipated by the entire world.
Right. Call the
fair point.
All right, Doug, talk us through the East here.
Clearly, I say something and I'm always wrong. So instead, gives the Black Sea to Turkey. I think that's the most significant move here. I will highlight that you've got the convoy to Tunis with the Venice to Trieste, but that feels very planned to me between Karl and Nicolas. That looks like it's planned. So I really want to focus on the Black Sea because this gives Turkey a lot of opportunity to stay alive and be relevant in this game.
Yeah, well, let's go to the West first, and then we'll talk a bit about the overall situation. David, what do you see over here?
Well, I was going to say the West is You're going to take 2 on Belgium. We're going to put 2 on Belgium and stop you, and that's exactly what EF did. I will say though, if you're going to oppose the Germans, it might have been cooler just to bounce him in Denmark, which only takes 1 unit, and then take a shot at Munich. Because if the guy's trying to put 2 guys on Belgium, which is probably what he was doing with that opening, then take a shot at Munich. And guess what? That would have worked. So they could have kept him from getting the 3 neutrals and taken Munich. That would have been a little better. But at any rate, that's about all I've got to say about the West.
I like your tactical deployment there, David. I think that would be the right call. I mean, this is still good, but that would have been pretty fantastic.
And if Doug Moore and David Hood agree on anything, it might be worth looking at.
I feel like the streams have already gotten crossed twice in this game, and we haven't even finished 1901 yet. All right, to be clear about what those streams were, it was David complimenting Doug, and then David agreeing with Doug. It's very uncomfortable.
We'll fix it, Doug. Let's fix that.
All right, we'll get back.
You worthless SOB. Let's fix it.
Thank you. It's much better when mommy and daddy are fighting. Okay, so it seems to me that this went really well for Russia. This is just you've got this weird strife in the West. You don't have an army in Norway. You don't have an army in Galicia. There may be some problem between Austria and Italy. You've got. I actually like letting Turkey in the Black Sea here. I'll push back a little bit on you, Doug, here, just because it can give the rest of the board a bit of assurance that you're not going to just roll over everything if you're worried about a bit of early leader syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. And I don't want to question anything Peter does because he is a great player in this game, in this hobby, and most likely he's got a really concrete plan that he is charmingly getting people to execute on his behalf. He's really excellent at that.
So, all right, builds. We got some juicy stuff here, and it's going to start with Fleet Venice in 1901. You can't beat that. You just can't. You cannot beat that. We've got two armies in from France, so this is definitely an anti-German follow through. Yeah, Italy's got. It's a weird thing. Italy's got nothing to worry about from France, but is going to be hard pressed to make. Actually, they do have opportunity down there. Russia, for his part, builds an army in St. Petersburg. So we've seen a bunch of Fleet North Coast St. Petersburg. And here we see, somebody who has a lot of experience and is choosing the more flexible option. So elsewhere, we get Germany with the ambiguous builds. And this Fleet Edinburgh for England probably says, France, you got nothing. It's probably intended to say, France, you have nothing to worry about from me. All right. And do you guys want to make any comment on Fleet Venice?
No. I mean, as in, that is my comment. Don't build a fleet in Venice. There's no value in that.
No, it is the best build ever, Doug. Boy, you don't know what you're talking about. You've never known what you're talking about. And I've never wanted to disagree with you more, but I can't. You're absolutely right. That was a terrible build.
Thank you so much, Doug. My indigestion has gone away. All right. We've got spring of 1902. I'm sure that was TMI. Let us stay in the East, and Doug, tell us about what you see.
I'm interested that they let him into the Black Sea, and then they took it away. Their Bulgaria falls here, so you've got 3 people ganging up on David, which is generally not a good situation to be in. I don't like the hold in Venice. You put a fleet there and you're just pinning yourself in supporting Trieste. So, I feel kind of like Nicolas and Peter have a real opportunity here to grow pretty quickly going forward. And I will note that Peter took Norway.
Yeah, this is, Peter suddenly is in 2 centers.
Brandon, can I change my earlier answer? David Miller's not going to win this game. And Peter probably is going to win this game. Peter may actually solo this game. Just wanted to change my answer.
David, I know that I said that I wouldn't hold you to the choice that you made, but that was just a trick to get you to commit. And yeah, no, you cannot change it.
I have totally made the wrong.
It has branded you forever. All right, Dave, tell us about what else happens in the West besides.
Well, more bouncing in Belgium would be something I would say. Otherwise, it's obviously an EF. Melinda's an alliance player anyway, at least in the early parts of the game. So she's going to stick with this. That's why she built the 2 armies. She's committed to the alliance.
Fleet hold in Portugal is interesting. Easily could have gotten away with.
She literally does not want to do anything that might make England think she's not with him.
Yeah. All right, let's push forward here. Fall of 1902. Dave, we'll stay with you in the West.
Still bouncing in Belgium.
like every season, 3 consecutive. All right, so bounce in Belgium.
Bounce in Belgium. Besides, the only other thing I'll say is Marseille to Piedmont, which again, if you have built armies because you're EF and you can't really use all your armies, you might as well go into Piedmont. Because that could even be just going to Tyrolia to get around Switzerland. Sometimes we don't talk about Switzerland because it's not an actual space on the map, but it's actually a pretty important space on the diplomacy map because it prevents you from moving easily between some areas that you otherwise think you should be able to move easily. Yeah. So you have to go around it.
All right, Doug, take us around the East here.
You still have the 3 powers working to dig Turkey out. I really like this play right here by Peter. He's got a build in the north, and he walked out of Bulgaria for whoever takes it. Does Turkey take it? Is there a bounce? But this is a clear hey, we blew it up. I'm going to walk out. This is for you to get. And they walked in for free. They didn't even support the attack. So that was nicely done.
All right, let's see what. So Peter's build here, I'm curious to see. Is Army Sev the only option here?
There's no such thing as only. There's no such thing as only option. I would argue.
Only good option.
I think that you probably want to build Army Sev because you're not terribly likely to break out in the north, and you don't want to spook Germany by building in Warsaw. You could make an argument to wave if you want to, but I wouldn't. I'd bring the hammer south. Clobber.
All right. And he does. We got an army from Austria as well, and England has to disband after losing Norway. Okay, let's keep going here. And in spring of 1903, let's stay in the east with Doug and talk to us about. We got a convoy across the Black Sea. Siobhan somewhere is tapping her feet together.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to make the guesses when you're on defense against three powers, and there's nothing really that you can do. This is the most frustrating part of diplomacy is you can be the best player in the world, the best tactician, and if three people decide they're going to gang up on you, you're going to go down relatively quickly. So nice convoy over there, good support, they guessed right. Not much to say about that. So what I'm interested in is seeing what's going to deploy out of that. How is it going to shake down between Italy, Austria, and Russia once Turkey's out?
All right. And David, can you summarize the West in one sentence?
Red.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bounce in Belgium.
Well, okay, because that leads to red arrows.
Bounce in Belgium. For the fourth consecutive season, we have a support just a bounce in Belgium. Most of them have been supported as well.
You know, Brandon, you remember what I said about when I play France? The most important thing I do is send at least 2 units against Belgium so that this doesn't happen. You can go back and take Iberia later. This is exactly why.
In spring 01 you're talking about?
Yes.
All right, let's then tell us about the bounce in Belgium.
Well, are you sure you didn't just put the last season's orders up?
They could have done it for sure. Burgundy could have gone there. Well, that would have been for sure, but
yeah, not for sure. But anyway, that's this can actually be frustratingly common when you're the French and you're attacking the Germans. You really have to have the English getting around to make it work, unless somebody else is putting pressure. It's a hard slog. That's why when I said earlier when she went to Piedmont, maybe it's the idea of going to Tyrolia. Of course, that doesn't work out here, but that would have been good because that's a way to get around this and allow her to get progress against the Germans. But otherwise,
she does get into Tyrolia here. But
are you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I couldn't read that. Yeah.
It would have Vienna tried to go to Tyrolia, but it went to Piedmont instead.
I see the black hair now. It's hard for me to read, but yeah.
Yeah, but Trieste supported the move anyway, so it would have gone. But I have to point out there's a unit here that could have gone to English Channel, several seasons ago, and made Belgium a moot point.
You talking about the fleet?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to spook the English. She's a big time alliance player. I'm not saying it's the right move. I'm saying that's probably why she did that. Yeah.
All right, Doug. So we stole the thunder on Tyrolia. What else you got for us?
Russia just took all 3 of Turkey's dots
in 1 year. Oh wow!
In 1 year. I mean, this is just absolutely devastating.
Brandon, could I change my answer?
No, you've got the.
I want to vote for Peter.
So, I mean, this is about as fast as I've seen Turkey get eliminated in quite a long time.
Peter's going to win this game.
I think. He also made a really sublime move in the north. He took the risk. He went to Finland.
Yeah.
And opened up for a northern fleet. And the chaos in the west is really paying to his advantage. I like that Nicolas took Romania because he absolutely has to in this instance. If he doesn't, Russia just explodes, and they're going to explode anyway.
Yeah, but if he doesn't, why keep playing at this point, right? The question now, I mean, the question is just how big does Peter get? I mean, if the rest of the board stopped everything they were doing and started trying to push him back, they could do it, but that's what it would take right now. Yeah.
I mean, of course they can stop him, but the West has to resolve their differences if they're going to have any prayer of stopping him at this point, but
it would need to be all 5 of the remaining players, I think, getting on board at the same time. Yeah.
The fleet in Venice is very costly right now, by the way, because they can't even use AI can't even use that to go up into Tyrolia, for example, and try and lock down some lines.
The other thing that's ossifying these positions is the fact that the French only has 1 fleet. So what do they do with their armies? Do they sit around while everyone else tries to stop Peter? I mean, generally when Russia grows, the French go, yay, because you're attacking people that I'm against. And that might be what's happening here. Melinda's just saying, fine, let him grow. He's going to hurt the people that I'm trying to fight.
Yeah, but if she fights them, then it'll just help Russia even more. I mean, Russia has the pole position now. So until that changes, I mean, but I get it.
How does she benefit from knocking him down? She's got 4 armies. I mean,
what I'd be worried about here is if Karl does something like attack Nicolas, then Peter's going to just roll fast. So, I mean,
with what? He's got a fleet Venice. He can't even do it.
He could go for Greece or something if Peter's sweet honey dripping words him, into making a mistake.
Yeah, not only
love Australian accents, we really do.
We do.
All right, let's push forward here. I mean, not only is there a fleet Venice, but there's an army in Tunis, right? I mean, it's yeah. Okay, let's see what we got. Let's go to you, Doug, Dave in the West, and we have Belgium.
Somebody took. Wait, really? They took Belgium while losing the North Sea. That's not really ideal, but
at least something. Can you say
took Belgium? Yeah, that's good.
But can you say Belgium the way you say it at the end of the deadline broadcast? Thank you. Okay.
Someone has taken Belgium.
There we go. Good. Okay, what else happened? Talk to us about the Scandinavia, because there is some...
actually took Norway off the Russians, but of course the Russians were repositioning anyway, moving lots of units around to put them in better position, which they've succeeded in. So I understand they lost Norway, but their position's not bad at all.
Notice though how he moved Finland back to St. Petersburg to give himself a retreat.
Yep.
Just in case the others bounced.
Which he didn't need, but yeah, exactly.
Well, and also now he can dislodge Norway without having a retreat to Sweden, St. Petersburg open.
True.
So it's surely foresight.
And look him in Silesia.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm a little concerned about Nicolas not doing really much anything here. Maybe he's nervous about Italy. Like I talked about before, Italy doing something that doesn't make any sense in the context of this game. Going to the Aegean Sea is one of those things. Why do you need to go there? Let Austria go there and actually send your fleets west, or whatever you want to do. Sit in the Eastern Med.
He went there to attack the Austrians because there wasn't any other reason to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so
got to deal with the Russians, because they're good to deal with.
All right, let's move forward here, see what happens in the fall of 1904. And what we find is in the east, Doug.
Good redeployment by Peter. We've got an attack on Greece as we predicted. Peter's rolling. Look at him moving to Bohemia. He's deploying for an attack eventually on Austria.
And in the west/north, Dave.
Well, he's working with Advait. You can see that moving the guy down to Bohemia, taking Norway back, bouncing the English out of North Sea as Advait takes London. I mean, he's actually working with he's dripping that Australian honey into Advait's ears.
And in fairness, Advait had no other option, right?
Well, not obviously, we just talked about the fact there was a diplomatic option, was to work everything out and resist the Russians, but that didn't happen. So, given that fact, you're right that he didn't have an alternative.
All right, let's push forward here. So the Germans took London here, so the Germans do get a build. England will get a rebuild, and they put down an army. Good for you, Jason. Army's good for defending the island, which is what you clearly need to do at this point. Elsewhere, we have a German army. We've got an Austrian army, and we say goodbye to the army in Tunis, which stayed in Tunis for a while. All right, spring of 1905. David, let's stay with you in the West. Some black arrows and some red. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, actually, a fair amount of red in terms of the sea areas. We didn't say this, but Melinda really did move to the mid-Atlantic last term. But that's because she's going to go mess with the Germans, not because she was going to mess with the English.
Right.
But the Russians actually reposition and move out because they, as Doug's getting ready to talk about, they have different plans for their army in Bohemia, for example. and they're rearranging their armies or their units in Scandinavia because they have different plans in the east. Take it away, Doug.
I mean, clearly Peter has lured Karl into his web of deceit and destruction, because Karl has executed what is a picture-perfect series of moves for Russia. Does take Greece, blows up that fleet, enabling him, Peter, that is, to take Romania. So now, I mean, this is a really devastating turn of events for Nicolas, but I think it's a really devastating turn of events for the rest of the board, because Peter's going to get the lion's share of these dots in relatively short order. At this point, if I'm playing this game, I am spending my time talking to everybody else about, like, what are we doing to stop Peter from soloing? That is what we need to do. We have to organize that defense right now, because that's the track he's on right now.
He's going to solo. I think he's going to solo this game because there's probably not anybody that could be the ringleader for that except for Nicolas, and he can't get the Italians even to realize it.
I mean, Melinda might be able to do it. She's got to persuade Jason and Advait to do that as well, and that's going to be tough right now.
Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating? We're talking about a solo in 1905 with a power that is on 9 centers. And it seems really clear that, like, the solo path is just wide open right now. It's a testament to how well Peter has managed this game so far up until now.
Yeah, that's really true. And maybe we're wrong, and these guys can turn it, and gals can turn it around. But man, it sure doesn't look like it. Haven't
seen any sign of that happening.
We need to see Italy pull off of Nicolas in order to really stop that, because Nicolas is the only power that has the armies that can check Peter. Yeah. And right now he's about to lose, more. Yeah.
And then we need to see, German army to Silesia, French army to Bohemia or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, wouldn't you? And so if you're Melinda, aren't you talking to Germany about putting them into Belgium here, just trying to replace or are you getting Belgium so you can put down a fleet, trying to replace, you got to change the strategic situation.
You just got to jettison the English and become the FG and try to use that to fight the Russians.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay, we luxuriated a little bit there. Let's move on to fall 1905. Did I just skip? I just skip right over it. All right. Dave, tell us about the West. Looks easier to parse.
Yeah, Russians are in North Sea. That's just terrible.
With support from the Germans and Holland.
Yeah, it certainly is not. And look, the French are still trying to make progress against the Germans. So this is just really a disaster for stopping the Russian behemoth.
Dave, similarly, the story in the South, I would say, is Trieste supporting Tyrolean to Venice.
Yeah.
So there's a French guy there.
And there's a lot of other stuff that happens here with Austria and Italy fighting.
Although, honestly, maybe even if I'm Melinda, even if I'm worried about the Russians, maybe, kill the Italians, because they're not part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. They're part of the problem.
Yeah.
I agree with that as well. Yeah, I mean, Peter's still in just a great position. I mean, it looks like it's degraded, but it hasn't, because he just blew up another Austrian army, replacing it with an Italian fleet that's totally useless in that position. You can't even attack Romania going forward.
Yep. And so Peter's going to be putting down 1 here, and it's no surprise, an army Sevastopol. Melinda does get a build, puts down a fleet in Marseille, which indicates that she wants to try to eliminate Italy here, rather than try to shore up the north. Interesting. Okay, let's push forward here. Spring 1906. Tell us about all of the merry-go-round in the east, Doug.
In my opinion, what's happening here is like more strong Peter play. He slides into the Aegean Sea and Smyrna. That gives him access to Bulgaria. Most importantly, he gets into Ukraine. Now he's got multiple supported attacks. A lot of guessing that has to happen. It does feel perhaps a little bit like the other players have persuaded Italy to back off, but I think it might be too little too late.
Do you think this should have been a fleet build now that we're looking at it?
No, I don't need, at this point, I don't need a fleet in the South. I'm not going to be a fleet power down there. I need to just hold Turkey and drive my army south, and then late I can build fleets. I'm not going to get to the Ionian before France does in almost any scenario.
I was just thinking of putting black, but that would be really to get leverage over Bulgaria, which you don't really need.
I'm perfectly content to have an Italian fleet in Bulgaria.
Yeah. Okay. What about the West, Doug? Dave? Anything of significance?
Well, when faced with a Russian who's trying to win, the Germans should definitely convoy to Yorkshire. Although, it's hard to know exactly what Kiel to Munich and Munich to Tyrolia really means. But since he's working with the Russians, I think it probably means something really bad for Nicolas and for the game.
Yeah, can we? Is it worth trying to get inside Advait's head here?
Well, he may think he has no choice, and Brandon, you pointed this out earlier. If you're not able to work something out with your Western, neighbors, and the Russians are saying, "Hey, work with me," and no one else is saying, "Work with me," then I guess you work with the Russians. I mean, what do you do? Pound your head against the sand? So maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he's hoping he gets some builds, and then he uses those builds to defend against the Russians. But it's wow.
Yeah, it's tough.
Can I change my earlier answer?
No, it's permanent. If you, it's tough, right? Because it's easy to look at Advait and say, "Why aren't you fighting, against Russia?" But somebody has to present him with a different strategic option. Like if nobody else on the board presents him with a different strategic option, just keep stacking him. I mean, it's a completely reasonable thing to do. All right, then Dave, keep us going in the West here.
Well, the Russians have taken Edinburgh, as they do when they're in the North Sea,
with support
from his German ally, because they're thick as thieves, those two, and Germany's going to get a lot out of that in the long run. Now he does cover Berlin, which is probably smart considering there's an Austria next to Berlin. He was worried about that. Doesn't have to worry. He doesn't have to cover anything against the Russians because the Russians are his allies. I don't see anything. Lots of other red arrows. Well, lots of other red arrows. Otherwise, I think. Yeah.
So, Doug, in the east, looks like some dipsy doodle. Actually, I see a misorder that is of significance here.
I haven't looked at the misorder yet. I actually think what's more, Nicolas put together a pretty decent defense here.
Yeah.
So that was nice. I really noticed that Italy is taking back. Italy is taking back Venice, and at the same time he just cut Serbia, which I thought was really interesting.
The misorder here is Romania not supporting Greece into Serbia. It supports Aegean into Serbia.
Yeah.
Or into the misorder.
I don't know that that's necessarily a misorder.
Right.
I want those dots for myself, and Italy is moving back west, so maybe it was an honest misorder, maybe it wasn't. But I think it actually turns out pretty good for Peter anyway. I want Italy not to really grow at this point,
even if it slows down Austria's demise. Since
I probably would have supported that. I probably would have gone ahead and supported that. But you can make an argument for what Doug's saying, that you do an intentional misorder.
If you're getting a dot on the north, like you're still growing. All right. My question for you guys is Fleet St. Pete or Army Moscow here?
I want a fleet.
Yeah.
North Coast. Yep.
Yeah, there's no question. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah. Normally, I don't like a North Coast fleet, but I don't want to spook Germany, who's continued to help me. I'm putting it on the North Coast.
You like a North Coast fleet when you're rolling in the West with a German ally. That's the one time you do one.
Yeah.
Instead, we get the Army Moscow.
Wow.
It gives him tactical flexibility for dealing with this little monster. He can get rid of this one while also going to Ukraine. That would be the argument.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to tell Peter he doesn't know what he's doing, because
indeed
he does.
All right, let's hear some more about what Peter knows. Doug, take us around the east.
Peter knows how to take 2 dots off of Austria. He just took Vienna and Budapest, and he tried to go to the Ionian Sea, didn't get in there. So he's making his play right now, is what I'm seeing on this board. He got into the north. I won't go all the way to the west, but my story of this board right now is Peter's utter dominance of the board, and nobody is able to stop him in any kind of effective fashion. He is just cruising.
David.
I really feel like the Russian national anthem should be playing during this, because this is really just Russia going everywhere and doing anything he wants to do. Other than misordering, I don't know that Peter has made a bad move in this entire game, and he just continues to dominate. He's just in great position. There's just no way around it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, one thing we do know is that the French continuing to fight with the Germans is a really bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I question, whether or not there's like some spite going on, like something happened where it's like, I don't care if he solos. You guys messed with the wrong person, whoever, is in that situation, because
it wouldn't be Melinda, because that wouldn't be her style, but it could be Advait.
Yeah. I mean, I've played with Melinda, she's a very savvy, strong player, and has been around the block quite a few times, the diplomacy block. So it's not like she doesn't know what she's doing.
So for me, the question at this point is kind of the only drama left here is whether Peter needs to stab Germany for the solo, or whether he somehow manages it without doing that.
I mean, that would be interesting to see if he can do that.
Yeah. All right. Dave, let's stick with you in the West. There is some activity. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the Germans take Liverpool. That qualifies as activity. Otherwise, lots of red arrows.
This seems interesting to me here. We've got North moving to Norwegian unsupported with Edinburgh holding. Misorder, or are you happy to stay in North if you're Russia?
I think he cut the support.
I think that was cutting the support. Yeah, I think that was cutting the potential support for Liverpool to Edinburgh, or something like that.
Okay, but you want to stay in North, so you don't support it.
Exactly. You definitely need to stay in North. Yeah, I see your question now. Yeah, this again. Peter knows exactly what he's doing.
All right, and there is a bunch of dipsy doodle in the East. Tell us about it, Doug.
I mean, I'm almost curious at this point if Nicolas is basically walking out of his dots, because that's what just happened. He's like, I'm dead anyway. I'm giving my dots over. And Peter just helped Karl into Trieste and Serbia, but I don't think those are going to remain Italian dots for very long.
So no reason, in your opinion, to not stab Italy here and take those dots for yourself?
I want Nicolas out of the game if I'm Peter, because Nicolas is a sublime, effective diplomat. He's one of the best tacticians on the planet. And, I don't want him orchestrating a defense if the folks on the other side of the board are able to get things together.
Got it. Even if it's one unit, even if it's just sitting on one unit.
And there's no position here that Italy has that can stop. He cannot stop Peter at this point the way he's deployed.
Yeah, you see guaranteed dots and then really good follow-ups as well.
Peter at this point is guaranteed Bulgaria, Serbia, and Trieste. I think he just has to write the orders.
I want to know. So Italy gets 2 builds here. I want to know how many fleets in Venice we're going to find.
I hope the answer is 0.
You do understand you could only build one at a time, Brandon, don't you?
That's what you think, Dave. You are brilliant, but you are limited in strange ways sometimes.
No imagination.
Limited vision.
All right. The answer is 0. We do get an army in Naples, though. You could argue that should be convoyed over. So it's in this case
something like that. Yeah.
But we do get 2 Russian fleets. Yes. Maximal Russian fleet builds.
Now is the time.
It's been the time in this. Oh, you mean now's the time to put the hammer down? Yeah, that's certainly true.
I mean, he's got 13 centers. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 that he can get in the south within the next 2 game years. So he needs one other center somewhere else to get, and he can hold Edinburgh at this point. So
let's go back to the 30,000 foot view for a second. When you win a game and you solo a game of diplomacy, how does it happen? It happens because some of the players want you to, or don't mind if you do. So either the Germans and Italians didn't care whether he soloed or didn't realize he was going to solo, maybe. But this happens because there's been a breakdown. And some people say that means the game didn't go well. What that really means is that Peter has played the game really well. This is a psychological people game. I've said for many years, diplomacy is a game of people, not of pieces. So the way you get a solo is to control and influence the people involved. The pieces take care of themselves after a while.
Yeah, and I would add one thing to that as well is to stop a solo, you also have to be able to have the vision of how you're going to stop it and how somebody can get to those 18 dots. And that's something that comes with experience. And sometimes people just don't see that future out there.
Yeah. And also one thing that we're going to stop luxuriating in a minute, Brandon, but one thing is Russia is the most difficult one to stop once they get ahead of steam because they're on both sides of the stalemate line. It's sometimes easier to figure out a way to get a bunch of people together to stop somebody from taking Marseille or taking Munich. Russia's on both sides of the stalemate line. That's actually really tough to stop if you don't do it early enough.
Yeah, it doesn't come down to St. Petersburg, Munich, or Tunis, which it often does, which is, yeah. So your point is like once Russia has the tentacles out, it's too late. You got to stop it before those tentacles actually get out of their little cubby holes.
Rule of thumb for me, if once Russia gets to like 10 or 11, it's really, really tough. You got to stop them before that.
And now we're at 13. All right. So for me, again, the only drama is, does he have to stab Turkey in order to do it? Does he have to stab Germany in order to do it? And so far the answer is no. All right. So the Italian moves are probably the most interesting ones down here. Talk us through them, Doug.
I'm not sure why you would do that. I mean, this game's over.
Yeah.
Italy
has just conceded the solo. And
yeah, I mean, the only hope that you had of stopping this is getting one of those guys into the Eastern Med, convoying over there, sacrifice Bulgaria and Serbia to preserve Greece and Trieste to stop the solo. That's what you needed to focus on. And give Peter, for the love of God, give Peter something to worry about. Slide over to the Eastern Med, slide up to the Adriatic, use those fleets to lock the line. And he just hasn't. And so now Melinda's got to pull back. I mean, it just impacts everything that happened on this turn.
Yeah. And Advait's not trying to stop it. I mean, now it's just which actual dots are they going to end up with? And so Germany does make some moves to try to, that could be construed as anti-Russian here, supports Piedmont to Tyrolia, bounces Prussia.
Yeah,
Looks in reaction.
There may have been some change here. There may have been some bit way too late though.
I think that's in reaction to Denmark because Peter took Denmark. And so at that point, Germany kind of reacted.
Wait, Russia's about to win. What happened about Denmark?
Yeah. Look, Advait's a relatively new player, right? I think it'd be interesting to hear from them exactly what went wrong in the early game, because it did seem like the game solidified into England and France hitting Germany no matter what. Was that a breakdown in communications, failure of imagination, inflexibility on anyone's part? It's hard for us to know, but the end result is that they dilly-dallied, bouncing over Belgium while the purple tentacles spread around their throats.
Here's one prediction I will make. Siobhan, if you ask her, is going to say this was Jason Mastbaum's fault.
She's giving a thumbs up in the green room. So, Jason, you could have done better, man. From Siobhan.
I will actually. I'll point out, David, you made the point early in the game about the bounce in Belgium versus sliding over to Munich. That play has a lot of influence in what we're seeing right now because Germany would have fallen.
That's true.
And Peter would not have had, his ally to put him over the line. So just that little move, that was critical.
That's a good point.
All right. And so now we're seeing the advancement. So he's at 17 here, just needs one more, and clearly, now Advait is just saying, well, it's over.
He's got 3 or 4 different centers that he can take.
Yeah, he's going to lose Edinburgh, but he's got these two, Kiel and Berlin, and then Holland would fall pretty easily, and he'd get north back, and blah blah blah. Right, he's taking Trieste down here, so it's going to. All right, it's going to be over this year.
Sometimes we spend too much time. I'm not talking about we in the three of us, but sometimes one spends one's time complaining about the people who didn't stop the solo without saying, "Way to go, Peter."
No, Peter played a brilliant game. He's the best players in the world. He's a world-class diplomat and strategist. tactician, everything. He's the full package. And I think he really put on a pretty clinical display right here.
You know, often solos are thrown. You know, somebody breaks out, everyone else on the board tries to stop him, and then someone dots someone from behind. Like that's a common path for a solo, or they start to try to get together, but they can't, and you know, they won't make the moves that they need in order to trust each other, and then they just start attacking each other. Usually somebody loses their temper in some way. Hard for us to know if that happened here. It doesn't look like it, right? Like this was sort of a slow motion solo from the beginning.
And I think that oftentimes, you know, I think solos are random, and I've talked about this before, like you're talking about, and Dave alluded to the breakdown. But what's not random is Peter positioning himself and building up to the opportunity, so that if those events on the other side, if that breakdown happens, you can take advantage of it. And that is something that a lot of players would do well to pay attention to in this, because Peter did a masterful job of setting himself up for that to happen.
And you set yourself up both positionally, like you're talking about, and diplomatically. I mean, a reason that Advait did not turn was, I'm sure Peter was a great guy to work with. And the same was probably true for the Italians. Peter said something, potentially, that caused the Italians to do what they did earlier in the game. So you position yourself not only with the pieces, but with the people.
And what's nice is you can sort of see every step along the way with Peter. Like almost every decision he makes that we can observe keeps open that path, right? Every build, every movement, every sort of support of an ally. I wonder about the not supporting Greece into Serbia. We question whether that was deliberate or not. I'd be really fascinated to find out. He ended up doing it the next year, but like Doug said,
he said in the chat while we were talking that it was a mistake. It was a mistake.
Oh, is that right? Okay. But it wouldn't have changed the result either way, right? No. So, all right. Congratulations to Peter McNamara, the Australian Peter McNamara, who I can only assume has secured a spot on tomorrow's top board.
Well, it seems pretty likely, yeah.